Okay, so you've got your path, and that makes sense, and that's going to be a good path for some other people, but that's obviously not the path for everybody. So, have you helped others along similar, the same idea with tent making, but not your digital media creation? And what are some of the best paths? And then how does somebody choose a good path?
So I think one of the things that as far as choosing a good path, I think looking at the things that genuinely interest us that don't feel as much like work as other things. So I know you and I were talking briefly about short term rentals as an option for some people. That's something I've done that twice. I had a good experience with it. There are other things that I like a little bit better, but that's something that I have done, and it's been something I really enjoyed and found a lot of benefit from it. Another thing that's always fascinated me are things like laundromats and car washes and vending machines and things like that. So I know for some people that's their path. I'm so boring that when I watch YouTube, it's typically to watch a car wash video, and it's like a business owner car wash video, not just cars getting washed, although I like that too.
Yeah.
Or like vending videos or things like
Uh-huh.
that. And it gets my daydream machine, the AI in my brain, right? Like
Yeah.
just saying, what if I do this? So
Yep.
I have thought about incorporating some of those things in.
Yeah.
But as far as like just encouraging people to kind of get this sort of stuff figured out. One of the big things that I have found that's immensely helpful when talking to entrepreneurs, even before they figure out their business thing,
Mhm.
is to help them figure out their finance thing.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is this. I it in when I so I'm 47 right now. When I was in my 20s, one of my primary goals as far as finances was to just live within my means. That's what I would often say. I just got to live within my means. And so I would do that, but yet I would still finance everything. And what I thought living within your means meant was just making sure I could pay for whatever my expenses were. And so I did that. I had a really good credit score, and I could pay for my car expenses, my other things. But I also realized I wasn't really getting ahead because in a sense I was living beyond my means.
Mhm.
And when I started realizing that debt wasn't for me, and I had played that game long enough and started getting rid of my debt. And so I spent my 30s basically getting rid of the debt, and then into my 40s finally paying off my house and all that once I had multiple streams of income and wasn't taking on any more debt. That freed me up to be able to take some chances when it came to the entrepreneurial side of things because I didn't have anything hanging over my head. There was no car payment or mortgage payment or anything like that. And so being somebody who looks at finances and says, I'm going to try and have multiple streams of income, and I'm going to try and live not just at my means, but well below my means. And to consider, not everybody's willing to consider this, and I'm sure everybody's got their own reasons, but I just throw it out there as food for thought. Consider living a debt free life, seeing if you could get there. I have to say, when I made the pledge to go debt free, that freed my mind up and it freed my finances up to be able to daydream a little bit and take some of the chances that I took on other things. For example, one of the things that I noticed over time, people started asking me, all my content, I was creating all faith based content because that's what I care most about in this world, my relationship with Christ and encouraging other people in their walk with Him. I started noticing that people that didn't even share my faith were asking me all sorts of business type questions about what I was doing. And it dawned on me that a lot of their questions were basically, how did you build your business? So they were seeing I had a whole online platform. They wanted to know the logistics. They didn't even care about the content. They just cared about the logistics. And I also looked at that too. And I was like, well, that's a great opportunity for me to talk about the content as well when I'm showing people some of the logistical things that I'm doing. So that's when I got an idea about 3 years ago to start up something called platform launchers. And that's the business side of what I'm doing online, where I help people build, grow, and monetize online platforms. And to do that, the way I wanted to do it, it was going to require that I use the software that I mentioned before, Kajabi, which is not cheap. And I remember at the time, even before I had a penny coming in from leading that and creating that, I thought, you know what? I have the financial margin to just take this risk, whether it works or not. because I don't have any debts. I don't have any abnormal expenses. I don't even have a mortgage at this point. So I was willing to take some financial risks because it wasn't going to be something that put my family at risk. And so that's why, and so, when I launched Platform Launchers, I did that as somebody who was debt free and was able to take financial risk on building a business, knowing that even if it flopped, I was going to be fine financially because I didn't have those burdens hanging out over my head. So that's why I know it's more of a mindset type answer than it is like a specific answer to someone's direct business question.
Mhm.
But I feel like you land in a better spot if you can get your personal finances in a good spot. It helps you to not make foolish, rushed, or desperate decisions when it comes to the business side of things.
Gotcha. No, I love that. I think, having the right mindset for finances and getting in a place where, like you said, you're free and then being able to take risks and invest in things, that's incredible. So
Yeah.
for a 22-year-old who's just come out of college, is your advice go get a real job, or or do you feel like there's paths to jumping into entrepreneurship right out of college before you've built anything for the most part?
So there are definitely paths, but one of the things that I do oftentimes encourage people in that context is don't disparage a traditional job if there's an opportunity like that you take for a little while. Maybe you take that for a few years while you build your dream thing on the side. It's
Yeah.
not a bad option because it gives you a starting spot. It doesn't mean you need to stay there forever. But one thing that sometimes we can make a mistake of doing in the entrepreneurial world, and I think I've probably done this from time to time, is almost disparaging traditional sources of income. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes traditional sources of income can really be helpful. They don't have to be a permanent solution, but they can be an ongoing solution for a season of time. Or it could be that the Lord would ask somebody to stay in that traditional source of income for other reasons as well. And so I encourage people, don't disparage it, don't look down on it because it might be an option. And the cool thing is, if you have at least one predictable source of income, it can help you as you're trying to build the unpredictable side of your income streams as you try and build multiple streams out. Like most of my income streams are they have a rhythm to them, but they're not exactly predictable. But because I have multiple income streams, if one is a little lower one month, that's fine because probably another one of them is going to be a little higher
Yeah.
that month. And they just seem to balance each other out in one way or another. And so it's kind of nice to have something predictable in there when you're venturing into the world of unpredictable sources of income.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Um, One of the things we tell the campus students is once you get a job, don't start living like you have a job. Keep living like you're a campus student so
Yeah.
that you can build something. Don't go buy a car and get a loan. And, I had college professors that were wise enough to tell me that while I was in college. And it was so helpful to not, go spend big money and get big debt right off the bat. So I love that.
Nate, you're gonna appreciate this. The irony of you saying what you just said right now is kind of entertaining. I teach a class on Fridays. It's a 3 hour, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. class called Biblical Perspectives on Contemporary Issues. And at the end of each semester, I take a spot to just talk about personal finance. And
Hmm.
so we did that just, less than a week ago in the class that I taught. And one of the things that I showed them a picture of was someone that I know. This is the son of a friend of mine. I blurred out his face so that his face wasn't visible with this, but he was standing with a brand new, super expensive car that he had just purchased fresh out of college. And I know that, I mean, I'm assuming he might have a full time job, but he might not. And he just finished college and this is a 4 figure monthly payment on this car. And I put the picture up. I blurred his image out, but I put the picture of the car and his blurry image standing next to it. And next to the image, I put, "This is how you become poor." And I just let the image just sit there on the screen for them to look at this. And I was like, "This is how you become poor." This is
Yeah.
mostly college juniors and seniors that I was saying this to.
Yep.
And I was like, do you understand why I'm saying this?" And we talked about it for a little bit. And I said, most people, the second they get their first full time job, they go out and buy something that's well beyond their means. They go out and buy a brand new car. And I have to confess, I did that right out of college. I didn't buy something crazy, but it was brand new and something I didn't need to buy, and I shouldn't have purchased it. But in this case, it was a luxury car, and I'm just showing them this. And I said, yeah, you could look like a big deal, but be a financial slave for the rest of your life. Or you could actually have money and get to a spot in short order where if you want to have a nicer car, you can manage your funds in such a way that you start paying for those things in cash instead of being someone that has debt. And so I just thought it was kind of funny when you just referenced that. I was like, oh, I literally several days ago just had that conversation with a group of juniors and seniors at the university.
Oh, that's excellent. When I moved from Seattle down to San Antonio, I bought a an Accord for $2,500. And the one problem with it is that it didn't have any air conditioning. So for the next 5 years, I learned how to survive Texas heat without any air conditioning in my car.
It's
But it was
character
paying off.
building.
And I didn't,
It's paid
so that
off.
was cool. That part of it was cool. The AC wasn't, but it was
Love that.
Absolutely. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome, and how have you gone about that? Obviously,
I
going to
think
God, but
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that you have to learn to deal with is it's almost like what it takes to take or what it looks like to take steps of faith
mm,
when you're in the midst of an entrepreneurial journey. Because when I'm starting things new, I don't know if they're going to work or not. I think they might work, but I don't know if they're going to work. And so you have to be able to commit to something that may take time to get off the ground, and I think most people, they quit too soon.
mm,
And that temptation is there for all of us. And in those early days, there are certainly moments of discouragement. Like I can think of things that I started that initially they have a good start, and then it seems like, oh, maybe people aren't going to use this as much, and then it seems like it tapers off. But then you stick with it, you refine it, you improve it, you market it, you do all those things, you give it time to build, and then you look back after a few years and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did not quit back at this earlier stage, because it would have been very easy to quit when it felt all discouraging in that moment. And what I've discovered is most of these things, they just take time. You just got to stay consistent, be willing to do it even before anyone's willing to use it.
mm,
And if it's the right solution, it will bear fruit, and people will appreciate your dedication to it. It just takes time to build this stuff. People don't hear about it on day one usually. It
yeah.
takes a little while for you to build momentum. And so the one of the most discouraging things I think can be the fact that people don't use our ideas or our solutions right away. And we just got to be patient and persistent.
Mm. How do you know the difference between persistence and a bad idea? Because I mean,
Well,
you start something and you're like, okay, persevere and be persistent, and then you get to 4 or 5 years later and you're like, man, that was just a bad idea.
right. That's where having a team of advisors can really save you some trouble. I surround myself with some people that are highly allowed to speak into my life, and typically what ends up happening, I float my ideas in front of these people before I spend the 3 years trying to build something. And like for instance, when I started platform launchers, a couple of my friends were like, "This is exactly," when I suggested, they were like, "This is exactly the right thing." And one of my friends, a friend named Nick, he said to me, he said, "Honestly, I think this might be your best idea yet." He's like,
Mm,
"I think this is the," and so that was before it was built, but to have that affirmation from people who also had skin in the game in the sense that they were building their thing, so they knew what it was like to be entrepreneurs who build things from scratch and know what it's like to try new ideas and take risks, and they saw me about to be willing to take a risk on a new idea. And I still remember Nick saying that. He said, I think this is your best idea yet. I think this is the best idea I've heard you say. I think this is going to work. And he was right. It did.
that's awesome. One of the things that we have started talking about is finding mentors and finding
Yeah.
people that, okay, listen, you want to go in this field, that's awesome, but you can't just YouTube your way there. This
Right.
isn't fixing the brakes on the car. You're going to get some people that give you some good pointers, and you've got to be, a self-starter to some degree. But man, if you can have a mentor or a couple of people that, like you mentioned, bounce ideas off of, that's gonna catapult you forward in a way that just trying to grind it out on your own won't. How do you, have you advised anyone? How do you find a good mentor or choose a good trainer?
Boy, when it comes to that, I feel like almost any of those things, the very first thing you have to be looking for is character. So it's
Mm,
almost like when you're building a team around you of any kind, you got to look for the C's. You got to look for character. You got to look for competency. You got to look for, um, whether or not they're constant in the sense that they don't quit, and that they're compatible, meaning that you get along with them. And if people focus on those four, it's pretty useful when you're building a team of any kind that you surround yourself with. But I think that those four are also pretty useful when you're selecting mentors. And the other thing that is kind of helpful is in the business world, you want to select mentors that they actually have a track record of doing the very thing that you're attempting to do. You want to see, like, do you actually have some fruit to this, or is this all just talk? Are you somebody who just like talks to a good game, or can you actually demonstrate that you have a competency and a track record in this, that you're a person of character, that you don't quit easily, and that you're compatible with my personality, that you're somebody I think I'd even get along with, and it's hard to find the mix of all four of those. And
yeah.
sometimes, unfortunately, you discover that someone's character isn't what you thought it was going to be. I've had some instances like that where, you kind of thought people were one way, and then you discover they're another way, and you're like, all right, that's fine. And you just move on. But at the same time, those are the four C's that I like to look for.
I love that because I think a lot of people just look for the fruit and they go, "Oh, well, you made a ton of money. Let me follow you." And you've proven yourself in that area. But man, the character and the ability to be compatible with somebody else, I think that's a lot of times something that we don't even consider or look at, and just we follow the money instead of the character, which is man, that's gold. I love that.
And we might even want to add one more small piece to that. It's not really a small piece. Yeah, you want to pick mentors that are rooting for your success.
Mm,
Not just for their own success, but that they would look at what you're doing, and they are rooting for your success. There are people that I've worked with through the years that felt like they always rooted for my success, and it made a huge difference. And then there are people that I've worked with that definitely did not root for my success. They were rooting for their own success, and that's up to them. But when it comes to mentors, you want somebody in your corner that's actually rooting for you to succeed.
mm, I love that. Um, let's see. One of the big things we've started talking about is greed, and how do we, some of these things you watch the YouTube videos, like I'm with you. I've seen, maybe we've even watched the same exact car wash videos,
Maybe.
and some of the laundromat videos and all of those, I love them. And I've thought about it in the vending machines and all that. When you watch these people, it's all about how much money they've made and the millions that they've made and all of that. And it's so easy for our hearts to get drawn towards that instead of the ultimate goal of being able to give as much time as we can to God. And then if money really just starts flowing, then how do we give that back to God? How have you dealt with that in your own heart over the years to keep on the narrow path there?
Well, one of the things that we just said that certainly helps with that is if you surround yourself with people of character, they will speak into your life and help keep you accountable in that regard. But then I think it's also useful to look at what are your patterns with money already, whether you feel like you have a lot or a little. What's the first thing you do with money when the Lord entrusts it to you? Are you somebody that's committed to give? Do you give as the first thing that you do with your money, or do you consume? Do you idolize it? Is it something that brings you comfort at night if you have it, and worry at night if you don't have it? Because then if that's the case, it could very easily be an idol. I love what the Apostle Paul talks about when you look at Philippians 4. People always quote Philippians 4:13, and they talk about the fact that there it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then you realize when you read the earlier part of that chapter, Paul's actually talking about what it's like to have very little and what it's like to actually have an abundance of things that he needs. And he's like, but here's the thing, I've learned that I can be content in every circumstance, because if I have Christ, I realize I have enough. So if I only have a little and I have Christ, I still have everything I need. If I have a lot and I still have Christ, I have everything I need. And then when he says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, he's basically saying, I can do whatever the Lord wants me to do with what he gives me to do it.
Mm.
And I think if that's our mindset, I think that really does foster a sense of contentment instead of that, like you were talking about with some of these YouTubers, greed, where the primary thing they think about is consumption. And so it's like, what's the first thing you do? Like, what's your pattern right now, even before you feel like you have money? Because the truth is, if you do end up with money, you're going to do the same stuff you're doing now, just on a bigger scale. If the first thing you do with money is give, then the first thing you'll do with money then is give. If the first thing you do with money now is consume, then that's the first thing you're going to do when you get more money. It's just
Yeah.
going to be the same stuff.
Yeah. He was entrusted with little will be entrusted with much, right?
Exactly.
You can't handle the little stuff. The big stuff will be a big problem.
Yep.
So, love it. Two more quick questions here. Any favorite resources, books that you suggest future entrepreneurs digging into that have been super helpful for you?
So the yeah, laying a foundation for some of these things was really helpful when I was talking about like the personal finance
Mhm.
side of things. So the two of the most popular books on personal finance ever have been Rich Dad Poor Dad and
Mhm.
The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Some
Nice.
people love Robert Kiyosaki and Dave Ramsey, some people don't like them. Regardless, I like them, and I've actually had the privilege to meet Dave Ramsey a couple times and get to know some of the people around him. I've had some of their people on my shows and all that. They're the real deal. I genuinely appreciate them and have been highly blessed by their counsel. And so the benefit of reading Rich Dad Poor Dad is it taught me the difference between liabilities and assets. And he
Mm.
says those that get ahead financially buy assets. Those that stay perpetually broke typically spend most of their money on liabilities, things that are taking money out of their pocket.
Right.
And that's what most Americans do. They just buy liabilities. They just, car payments and other things they finance, and they just waste their money, and it just drains money from their pocket instead of
Mm.
buying assets, things that grow in value.
Right.
Dave Ramsey, the benefit of what he shares financially is he actually gave me a system that I was able to use when I read his book. I was like, you know what? This is a useful system. So I actually followed what he recommended, got rid of debt, invested differently, and paid off my house. I just went through the steps that he recommends. I just did them all. And I was like, okay, so that actually worked and actually helped me build momentum, and it liberated me to be able to do a whole bunch of other things. And so I tell people, like, get your finances in order, because you can find business counsel in a variety of places. I mean, I have a few things. I have one book that I'll recommend, one of my own books, if that doesn't seem too
Go for it.
self-promotional, but I have a book called Build, Grow, and Monetize Your Online Platform. So if someone wants to go in the digital space, that's something that'll actually show them what to do in the digital space. But even before you get into some of that, I really would recommend getting your personal finances in order. And Kiyosaki and Ramsey, both of those guys helped me out quite a bit.
Excellent. Yeah, I love both of those books. They're wonderful. Last question here. John, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What are you doing?
I don't know what doors the Lord's going to open up for me, but I know what I daydream about. So I often talk about wanting to be just God's free agent. And what I mean by that is I just want at any moment for him to, like, whatever he assigns me to do, I want to at just a moment's notice be able to just jump into it and say yes. And I picture, I look at the spiritual condition of our world, and our world truly needs Christ. And sometimes I just think to myself, you know what? I'm just going to make sure I have all my finances in order so that without asking for any compensation whatsoever, I could serve in whatever ministry the Lord gives me the opportunity to serve in. And sometimes I just envision almost being like I don't know, like a traveling preacher who just goes place to place preaching the message of the gospel. I'll take no compensation for it. I just want to visit your town, and we'll put up a tent just like they did back in the day, and we'll look at the word, we'll share in the gospel, we'll sing and pray together, and we'll just see what the Lord does, and that's kind of my dream. If someone asked me like what would you really love to do, like I really would love to just go on the road and just preach the gospel wherever the Lord gives me an open door to do so.
Mm, I love it. Amen. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your heart for the Lord and your wisdom today. This is definitely going to help quite a few of the listeners that we have. So thank you once again. It's been a great time.
Nate, it was great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely.